Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I see that I have someone that has joined me. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate that very much. As a reminder, this is live streamed on the class YouTube channel and is recorded there for everyone to watch later. So please, if you have any questions, limit them to questions of a public nature, general information only, specific to the exam materials, etc., and nothing for you personally, because this is a public forum, public venue. Okay, a couple of comments, and then I'll go ahead and get into the nuts and bolts of consumer protection. The exam this past week was okay. It was a little tick below what we had for the second exam, still acceptable for the most part. Um, Maybe not quite as many B's that I would like to see. I like to see a healthy amount of A's and a good amount of B's, and I had a healthy amount of A's, but not as many B's in this particular exam. Most of the class are now taking the exams, which is an improvement. The more you take of these exams, the better you're going to get at taking exams. When you miss exams, it makes it more difficult to understand and appreciate how to work your way through a logic and critical thinking type exam like a law exam may be. Now, let me go ahead and share my screen for you so that you can see what I'm seeing. There's not a lot on there, but it's a little bit better than looking at me the entire time, I'm sure. My notes for today's Zoom session. The exam for next week is on consumer protection laws. And again, another couple of general comments. The class builds on itself. And what I mean by that is that anything that you have from day one of the course to the end of the semester is fair game, because that's how law is. It's kind of like a math class, how you learn addition, and the addition becomes more complicated and it becomes more involved with um, other math equations and things of that nature. Well, the same thing happens for law. What we learned about in the courts and alternative dispute resolution course about federal jurisdiction may apply again in the torts exam or torts section, and it may apply in consumer protection. And in fact, it will. So make sure that you understand that you cannot treat this course like I'm going to memorize a few things for this exam and then forget it for the next exam. It will hurt you in the long run if you do that. And ultimately, my goal for the class is for you to be able to use law to protect yourself, to understand what your rights are, to understand what your exposure may be in many different situations. And it doesn't do you any good if you are microscopically analyzing just one thing and not thinking about the big picture. Law is about the big picture. So obviously, I'm going to build on it from week to week, and it will accumulate over time. Okay. There are consumer protection. It's federal and state law. In Alabama, we generally have pretty weak consumer protection laws. So we're focusing mainly on federal law, but that's not, um, if you happen to move to a state or your rights are affected by a state in another jurisdiction, you may have those laws to look at. And we didn't cover California consumer protection laws, which are very, very strong, for example. But so we're going to focus on federal law, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC. Um, we've been introduced to fraud last week in the tort section as an intentional tort. You're going to again have fraud here. Um, you need to understand some of the basic FTC type of rules and regulations related to fraud versus puffery, mere puffery, for example. What is a bait and switch? Can you recognize when that occurs or when just valid sales techniques are utilized? the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, TCPA, otherwise known as the Junk Fax Act. It's undergoing a really a metamorphosis in the federal court system now. The law is changing, but I think that everything that you have in your materials is still good and valid law, and that's what I will test you on as well. Um, the 3-day rule, what does that apply to? Is that for all sales? I had a student that called me, a former student that called me 2 or 3 years after taking the course about they had purchased some furniture in the state of Georgia at a retail establishment, and they wanted back out of the deal, and they were wondering about the 3-day rule. You should be able to know and be able to tell me. In fact, I ought to write that on the exam. I don't have the exam written yet. Um, as a test question, whether or not that 3-day rule applies, and if it does, what does it allow? And if it does not, why it does not apply. The Postal Reorganization Act, very interesting piece of law, and a lot of lay people will not understand that and will really get confused with that. The FACTA, Fair and Accurate Transaction Act, related to credit reports. What rights do you have under FACTA? When does it apply? A lot of people misunderstand that as well. What are some of the FTC remedies? We talk about lawsuits and we talk about damages, and I'm going to talk about that on Pivot in a minute, and I'm going to talk about that again. We talk about damages like um, compensatory damages, pain and suffering, mental anguish, lost wages, back pay, front pay, attorney's fees, those kind of things. Well, what kind of remedies does the FTC have? And they have some sort of different type remedies that may be applicable here. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk about is something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. I've been involved over the course of my career in probably well, a double-digit number of class action lawsuits. The very first one that I had related to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Sued a number of different companies, represented 1,800 consumers, and had a very successful outcome in that particular case, stopping some illegal collection activities from taking place and getting a very good result for my clients. As a result, that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to teach pretty heavily on that. I'm hopeful that the law will change in the future to provide better damages, better opportunities for consumers to be protected in that respect. But regardless, we're going to work from what the law is today. FTCPA, and you may have several questions on this. In fact, I will probably probably it's a great technique, a great tool to teach law because it's a federal law and it has a number of different parts. And I'm not going to say it's complicated because I don't think it's complicated, but you have to pay attention to detail. It relates to consumer law. This whole section is on consumer protection law. And so it relates to consumer debts, not business debts, consumer debts. So, make sure all the elements for Fair Debt Collection Practices Act exist. Just because something bad happens doesn't mean that A, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act may apply, but conversely, it also doesn't mean B, that you're without a remedy if the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act doesn't apply. There may be another law that protects them. I'm not right now worried about any other laws. This class, this course, this section is about consumer protection laws and the Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Right now, that may be what I'm asking you about. Again, it doesn't mean that if something bad happens, and the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act doesn't apply because it's missing some element, even though something bad happened, it doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to pursue the defendant for another reason. But right now, I'm not worried about that. Um, what are the elements? Consumer versus business, third-party debt collector. Who is a third-party debt collector in the first place? Again, if it's not a third-party debt collector, the FDCPA may not apply. And if it doesn't apply, are they out of luck? Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're out of luck, but it means that the FDCPA does not apply. What protections does it allow? What do the debt collectors have to do if you do certain things? Dispute the debt, tell them not to call. What's the situation there? When does the FDCPA allow damages to be recovered in certain fact situations? If they call you at work, does it allow damages to be recovered? Does something have to take place first? You need to know those kind of things. And then finally, what damages are allowed? What are recoverable under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act? Are compensatory damages allowed? What about statutory damages? How much statutory damages? We haven't really talked about statutory damages, but statutory damages are an amount specified in the statute. By definition, that's what a statutory damages are. If they does it allow punitive damages to punish the wrongdoer and to intentionally for intentional acts? Does it allow that? Does it allow lost wages? Does it allow attorney's fees to be recovered? What does it allow? Those are the kind of questions that may exist for purposes of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Okay, again, as I always say, that doesn't mean that this is everything on the exam, but I'm telling you these are some very important laws that will more than likely be addressed on your next exam. So make sure you pay attention to these. I do want to have one other housekeeping note. I promise, I'm going to have some bonus opportunities that will be appearing. Make sure you check your Blackboard. Your Canvas announcements. Make sure you check your Canvas announcements. I would recommend that you set your announcements so that it automatically is emailed to you when an announcement is posted. I understand that you can do that so that you can check your email, check your announcements. Most of the time, the bonus opportunities will be a short period of time. I'll post something. You may have 2 days, maybe 3 days to complete it. They generally will require you to watch a separate video, 5-10 minutes, and then take a quiz for 5, 6, up to 10 bonus points, depending upon the particular video and the opportunity. So be looking for those as well. Next exam, as always, is on next Wednesday. It'll open at approximately 6 a.m. Sometimes it may be later, maybe mid-morning. If there's a technical issue, it could be even a little bit later than that, but almost always it's in the morning. And then it will be available all day until midnight that day, or 11:59 p.m., I guess is more accurately. If you have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions at this point while I take a sip of my coffee and catch my breath from doing that, and I'll see if you have any questions.
I don't think I do, sir.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for appearing today and being here in case you have any questions. I find that it's helpful because sometimes I may say something that needs clarification. If a student is here and they hear something and it didn't resonate with them, there's a good chance the same thing occurred for other students as well. So sometimes taking one for the team benefits the class as a whole. I try to be as clear as I can. Law is difficult, and I understand that. A lot of people say it's tricky. It's detail oriented, and you have to critically and logically think through these things. I'm not sure that that makes it difficult. It's just a different way of thinking and a different way of studying. Okay, keep up the good work. If you're doing well, if you're not, nose to the grindstone, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Good luck with your next exam.